You're going to get me speaking at fucking 1,000 miles an hour, the speed Nick speaks at, because I just recorded a 17-minute audio clip and then the WhatsApp bloody crashed. So I'm going to sum it up in a frustrated manner. What was the worst times of my OCD? The worst was when I was actually starting to recover and I realized the lost years. And it suddenly dawned on me how much time I'd lost doing mental compulsions. I rang the Samaritans, a UK helpline, and I was like freaking out down the line. And then that sort of got me through a couple of days until I started to work on the fact that, hey, I've taken a great gift from this journey. If I hadn't suffered so bad, I'd never have this insight. If I hadn't had suffered so bad, my life wouldn't be empowered by this journey. I wouldn't think in the way I do. That was a pretty bleak time, I can tell you, when you realize that 9 years of 24/7 mental compulsions have been going on. And I thought I'd done it to myself and I'd ruined all my experience and like of life and happiness by just constantly doing that. That was a pretty bleak time. Other bleak times were when it morphed. I remember some very vivid moments of it morphing. I remember I was living by this canal in London, and it was during the days I was partying every like 3-4 nights a week. And life was great, and I was very happy. I was fit, I was healthy, everything was going well apart from mental health. And I remember standing in this shower, and I lived in this like loft building, and I was like standing in the shower. We had a night out. We are going to a club or something. I can't remember. And I remember standing in the shower and like I'd gone for a workout. You know, the your body's feeling super fit, healthy, energetic. You got the sort of dopamine, endorphins pumping from a run or something. And I was standing in the shower and I just started thinking, what if like the universe breaks or something and I get stuck in some kind of glitch and I'm tortured for all eternity? And then I thought, oh my God, but that could happen, especially with today with AI. You could easily think that, like, what if it creates a simulation, then that breaks and we get sort of stuck in some glitch, like bug, and then stay in that forever. And like, I just really got scared. And then that just stayed locked on for months and months and months. And you know, we're going to clubs, clubbing a lot. And I remember standing on this balcony in a club, and I think it was in Fabric in central London. Well, it was twice. I remember it once in Fabric very vividly. And I was standing overlooking like 1,000 people in this like drum and bass section. If it was like a drum and bass night, and I was standing overlooking this balcony. Music's so fucking loud. Your heart's like beating so hard because of the vibration of the bass. And I look down at people and I think, what if everyone's not real and like I'm the only person who's real in a simulation? Then harm OCD latched, and then I thought, what if I go around killing people because if I think everyone's fake, it doesn't matter. And that was like just made worse by the fact you're up for sort of like 2 days drinking and everything else. And I was just feeling very out of it and very lost in OCD at that point. Just my thoughts, like driving motorbikes down the street after late nights, and then just thinking to myself, like, what if I just veer off to the left and kill myself? Would it matter if I'm in a simulation? Then that freaking the hell out of me. And just, it was, you know where it really entered? It entered in those moments where if I didn't have OCD, you're like vividly enjoying life. Like when you wake up, you're in bed with a girl from the night before or something, the sun's coming up, the window's open, and you're sort of laying in bed and you're both like looking at the sunset or something, and music's still playing from the after party or whatever, and you're just looking there, you're like pretty drunk, like semi-drunk or whatever, and you're looking and the music's just in that right note that's hitting you in that sort of where it feels slightly surreal, and you're like loving life and you're like appreciating life and you're thinking quite deeply. But with OCD, when you've got existential, that's like multiplied negatively, because I was like, yeah, this is a fucking simulation. This is all fake. Yeah, this is too rare to be on this earth randomly for no reason. Like all of that compounding, and you just genuinely feel sort of out of it. Now, I hadn't latched to sleep or any physical anxiety like that at that point, but I was getting really heavy fatigue at that point because the OCD just felt so overwhelming that I was just like spending most mornings just sitting on the laptop, laying in bed, going back home for rests, always going to work, getting work done and stuff, but just positioning my life around that fatigue. And then the physical anxiety got a lot worse a lot later on. When it was like sleep stuff, that became a real nightmare. And then but also, there was some gifts in some of the madness. I can remember like having some of my deepest insights into OCD when I was truly out of it. Like I had such bad insomnia. There was periods where I obviously didn't sleep at all, at night at all, and there was other periods where I was sort of in and out of sleep, and then like sleeping 2-3 hours. I remember one day I was in bed. I slept like 2.5 hours. I was like, fuck it, I'm going out. I'm going for a walk, and I went for a walk. I was walking down a canal in like Paddington in London. It's like 5 in the morning. 4 in the morning. And I was just walking along there and I was just thinking about insights about life. This is years later after recovering from existential OCD, but very bad physical anxiety. And like I had great insights into how I was fighting my thinking and acceptance and so on at that point. And like I found that interesting as well, how like the brain can be in like a really bad position and can come up with great insights. But that's what the brain's like. Like if you just sit in a sort of very bland situation, you don't think much. Like if I go for dinner with some people that are quite boring or something, and then we're sort of having a very boring, mundane conversation, I don't feel my mind being pushed for great insight. But like I remember when I first told Nick, that I wrote a lot of the early posts for OCD recovery when like sort of smoking cigars in a cigar lounge just with a notepad. And then I said, you should try it, smoke cigars and see how that works with writing. And then he loved it and got into it and so on. But, can I just highlight for 1 second, I'm definitely not recommending going and smoking cigars for OCD recovery. Absolutely not. I'm talking about here just from a sort of creative perspective of how I was at the time. And, I noticed that when I wanted to think in different ways, music did that. Like you hear certain music or certain films, like you hear documentaries where certain sounds come in and certain reflections, like looking at maybe Manhattan, the skyline of Manhattan, and then the Hudson, and then some documentary film music playing, and it just taps on an emotional response in the brain that makes you question life, your relationships, your parents, how long they're going to be around, and all these things. And I remember there's many of these moments that I had insight into OCD, but I didn't obviously have the tools at this point to recovering. But then it just gradually synced over time, especially when I was like really sort of coming to terms with the Ellis work. But it gradually synced over times where there were insights that really did improve things at the same time. Like I remember I watch a lot of art house films, and I'm a big cinema fan. And I watch a lot of foreign films. I remember this wasn't a foreign film I was watching at the time, but I was watching one of my favorite films, Gran Torino, with Clint Eastwood. And I was watching, how careless he is and doesn't give a shit if he gets killed, in the film. And when I was watching it, you have little insights like, yeah, but if you didn't care about being killed as much, then you wouldn't have anything to worry about. And look at that old man, he doesn't care. And then when I was like swimming in a pool and I had a very bad back, so I've been given this swimming regime to recover from the bad back. And there was a guy sitting outside the pool. He's a bit weird. And I spoke to him and I said to this guy, who's that who swims in the lane next to me each day, that very old lady? And he's like, that's my mum. And she's 92. And she comes here and swims every day. And I was like, fucking hell, she's 92 and she's swimming laps in that pool. He's like, yeah. And I was like, is she healthy? He's like, not really. At 92, she thinks she could die any day, but she doesn't care. As little insights made a big difference to health OCD, just about how I saw things. And, it changed your life as you go through it. You see things that pick away at the sort of chains of OCD as you change your perception along the way. And you will see that people who have loads of control and people that don't have control, and people that you think are really strong and people that you think are really weak. I remember during the years I was going clubbing a lot, in the days it was UK Garage when I was younger, and there was one drug dealer in the club, and I was speaking to him, and he was telling me a story how someone had held him at gunpoint and put a gun to his head. And I said to him, how did that feel when someone put a gun to your head? He said, I was just crying like a baby. I thought I was going to die. And I thought, fucking hell, this guy's a really tough guy. I can't believe he got in that state. Like, that's not like how it is in the films at all. And then what happened was a couple of years later, I I was in a nightclub and I saw this drug dealer, and I saw him. He was giving up selling drugs, and he was going to what was he going to go into? I can't remember now. I can't remember what he was doing, but he said, yeah, he was going into like some kind of fitness thing. So he was in good shape, and he wanted to go in some kind of fitness thing. And I said to him, I said, how have you been? And he said, I'm turning around my life or something. And he was very worried that, like a lot of things he'd done, and he was getting very emotional. I think he'd been drinking a lot. And I thought, how does he get so emotional like that? I thought, this guy, like, I saw people's lives change during the years when I was watching people. I was really interested in how people were interacting with life and how they were thinking. And one of my qualities, probably in OCD recovery, has been looking closely at how, because I do think there's a huge creative element into the way that I think and the way that I've brought about the work today of OCD recovery. And that's come from sort of deep insight into looking how people think, looking how I think, and reflecting on philosophy and just general life, being vividly alive and seeing how we live. And often OCD is a bit like feeling too vividly alive, feeling too alive, almost too conscious. It can often feel like that as some kind of lens. I often try and encapsulate what OCD is and how it operates. And to use descriptive terms, it very much feels at times like being too alive, too zoomed in, like the consciousness has been turned up just too far, that makes you too feeling, so that you feel too much, and then that causes that anxiety response. And a lot of those things, like those worst moments, were experienced in sort of nightlife, semi-drunk states, being around dangerous situations, and just reflecting on those and how life can be short, how life can be risky, and where that all is. And like, it's funny, like your life is a series of perspective shifts that you hold, and how that changes. If I went back to my life at 21, that in my mind feels great and amazing and how I lived it, if I saw it today, I'd think, God, that's so fucking boring. What, you were just drinking with the neighbor? How fucking boring is that? Oh my gosh, you got with that girl. God, she wasn't even that great, like that amazing as a personality, or she wasn't the most attractive or whatever, and you just thought at the time she was amazing. It's like, you paint this picture all around your world, this sort of rich tapestry of colours that paints this journey in your mind, that you then look back with rose-tinted glasses like, oh wow, that was so amazing, and that was so this, but it wasn't. It's like when I look back at that drug dealer, the guy in the club, he was from Brownsville in New York. He was from a very bad life. He was a serious kind of gangster, and but he was emotional. Whenever I saw him in the club, because it was the days of house music and everyone was taking drugs, he got emotional and started crying about his emotions. He was probably going through loads of regret and guilt and everything, but I didn't really understand that at the time. And then you see people differently, like, in this job, when people come in the door and they say like, oh, I'm a very serious entrepreneur, and they're very controlling, very solid, I can see all the weaknesses in their thinking. I can see what's holding them. I can see how much they care about different things. I feel very separate to the world. I feel like I'm kind of like floating along as an observer of life, and just very distant often from most humans, because of how I think and feel, and how it was mainly how I think, which has brought about a different in feeling, in terms of how I observe the world. And that just comes through the OCD recovery journey. What I didn't realize when I was recovering from OCD is like, how you're not going to be the same person on the other side, but not like you lose yourself. You really don't want to be different to the end product of you, but it's very different to the you before. You will have had so much control, so much attachment and lockup, and like, with myself, I was obsessed with bodybuilding. I used to train at the main bodybuilding gym in London. I never missed a workout ever. I ate till I was sick. I ate till I damaged my body. I was in and out of hospital. All I cared about was being bigger and stronger, because I thought that was a way to feel great and to feel strong. I didn't need that. Through injury, when I couldn't work out, I had to accept losing the thing I cared about most. And that changed me. I had a friend, I have a very good friend, who's in his 70s, and his daughter died at 14 about 5 years ago. And when she died, it was his whole world collapsed. And now he's very different to how he was. He's still the same really good friend to me as he always was, but he's just got a very different view. Like he feels just the things that he cared so much about don't hold as tight, and that's what happens. Look at me. I work so hard, and I still have such big goals, but I don't have like the clinging where it's like my whole being relies on that, and that's so key to remember. And it goes through that with life, and you see different stages. I remember I was letting out my flat on Airbnb. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again in here. I didn't tell it in that audio clip that I just lost a moment ago, but I think it's a good time to tell it. And I had two great stories. Like I had a great journey with letting out one room in my flat on Airbnb many, many years ago. And I basically got into Airbnb when it only just started, the first couple of months it began. This entrepreneur came to my gym years ago, this guy from Canada, and he said, Rob, have you ever heard of this thing called Airbnb? And I said, no, I've never heard of it. He said, basically what I do is I rent out a room in my flat. And he was an investor in startup businesses. And so he said, I rent out a room in my flat, and then basically I put in the Airbnb description, if you want money, sort of seed money for starting your business, you can pitch your ideas to me for a couple of days in the house, and then I can put some money in for your business, and I'll do that. And he'd invested in different startups. So I was like, all right. I said, I was in a position at the time where I thought maybe I'll invest in a couple of startups. I'll set up an Airbnb page. I'll let out a room. I had a room in a cool flat in Notting Hill, and so I thought, yeah, it's going to get the sort of like arty, creative type entrepreneurs that are setting up new things. So I'll have them come and pitch ideas, and then we can meet, hang out, have a few beers, and so on. So anyway, it started off like that. And then like after a couple of months, I thought, you know what, I just love meeting the people. I just love the conversations and people just passing through. And so I decided, you know what, I can't bother to do this pitching for ideas. And like also some of the people that are pitching ideas, it was very intense. And I was liking this sort of Airbnb for the experience of like just meeting the people and the stories. And so I didn't really want to do all the to do this investment kind of side of things with that. And so I thought, okay, do you know what? I'll just do Airbnb in the room and just meet different people. Not because I needed to do it, but I just thought it would be nice to meet people. And in the end, I ended having like hundreds and hundreds of people come and stay. And my apartment like won on Airbnb like top 5 most best reviewed apartments at one point. And what happened was I saw everything through that experience. Like I saw, I remember I had one girl, she came to stay and she'd been in a bomb in the morning. She was in like Istanbul in the airport and the bomb had gone off and she just got away from that. And we sat out on the terrace and she was just telling me stories about her life and stuff. And she posted pictures of like, how amazing her time was in Notting Hill and coming to see me and like, and the polar opposite of when she was in this bomb situation. And then I had a woman who was on, she used to sit out on the balcony and just like smoke like most of the day. She was like in her 50s. She came and stayed. And obviously I vetted all these people so that they were like people that I wanted to, I didn't mind coming to stay. But I sort of like opened up the boundaries to that. So I wasn't too selective. Otherwise it just becomes boring. I wanted to have a sort of variety of people. And I remember she was sitting out on that balcony. She was smoking a lot in the evenings. And I went out to her and I said, you're always very calm and you're always very happy. Like, always like just very at peace. I think she was French. And she said to me, she goes like, look, I've got stage 3 cancer. She's like, I don't know how it's going to go, but I just really appreciate the moment and like that you've let me come here and all of this kind of stuff. And basically I built my living room to have this like giant library in there. And so this was before I was like doing lots of work with OCD. So I built this big library. The whole wall was books, right, from all assortment of the kind of things that I read from. Just tons of philosophy, loads of Ellis stuff on there, loads of books on OCD on there, loads of books about life, everything. It was a whole clusterfuck of books, right, and. The flat looked out like over this it looked out over the top of this hospital that was right next to my house. And years before, I'd been compulsively going to that hospital with OCD because of obviously health OCD. And it looked over the top of this hospital. So like, and it was like an old hospital from like the end, like maybe like 80 years ago, 90 years ago. So it was an amazing old style. And then in the background, it also looked over Grenfell Tower, which was a tower block that caught on fire about maybe, I think about, oh no, actually, I can't even remember off the top of my head without Googling, quite a few years ago now. And it was a terrible tower block fire in London, and hundreds of people all burnt to death in a terrible way. And then in the end, my flat looked over this black, leftover charred remains of Grenfell Tower. And actually, they then the council was looking for homes for the people that had lost all their family. And actually, 2-3 of the families from that Grenfell Tower moved into my apartment building. And to be honest, because my apartment building was this sort of like modern building, all the people in the lift often, they're all very snooty. They never wanted to speak. I knew everyone in the building. Like, I was really friendly. And a bit like how Momin is with his life, talks to everyone and everyone around him. But at that time, you know, I was talking to everyone, socializing. These days, probably not as much, you know. I speak so much in the work and all the things I do. I'm still very friendly with everyone. But at that point, I was like, you know, as young, I was very sociable. And I remember being in the lift, and people were very snooty, never wanted to know me, or only wanted to know me if there was something that was a benefit to them, or if they knew something about me and thought, oh, it's interesting to know that guy. And so then this families, they moved in from Grenfell Tower, a couple of families, and there was one woman there. Every single day I used to go down past the reception downstairs. She'd leave me bowls of fruit. She would always want to talk to me. She'd had a stroke. She'd seen all her neighbours die, and she'd had a stroke, and she was just recovering, and she was trying to set me up with her daughter at the time, who I didn't really fancy, but she was cool, the mum, and we got on well, and she was actually one of the nicest ladies who lived in the building. But that's a bit of a side story to the story that I was telling. So the apartment looked out over this skyline, and I had that woman in there who had cancer, and so I thought, geez, that was you know, I was thinking about life, and I was thinking about, you know, how short it is and the experiences, and I saw that with a lot of the people that came and stayed. And I wasn't particularly picky on the age of the people staying. Like, I would say, like, oh, someone could stay if they were 70, someone could stay if they were 20. And, you know, obviously I had some really bad guests. I could tell you crazy stories of that, and then I also had really cool ones. And the one that I was coming to, the main story, was one day I came home and I opened the front door, and there was literally like a bra on the floor, underwear, and like all clothes strewn all down the corridor leading up to the bedroom. And I thought, fucking hell, what's going on here? And basically I'd let it to a couple, and they were young. They were like 21, 22. And I walked in the apartment, and like, there was basically, they were having sex in the bedroom, and I'd just come into the flat, and they'd like been drunk. There was bottles of alcohol all over in the kitchen. And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this, but I obviously can't go in there now. So like, I went to bed angrily, and then I woke up the next day. I thought, I'm going to really tell them off for this. I went into the kitchen. The girl, who's a Dutch girl, about 21, she walks in, she's like, hi, Rob, love the place, so thanks for having us and all this stuff, because they'd like picked up the key from downstairs to come into the flat, so I hadn't even really met them. And we ended up talking, and she was really cool, and I was like, fucking hell, I've got to tell her now, like, she's got to get out, because that's terrible, like, how she's treated the flat. And so I was like, how did you meet your boyfriend? And she said, oh, I met him in hospital. And I was like, really? What happened? And she said, oh, I had I have cancer. And she said, but I've just done my chemo and radio. It's gone down a lot, so I'm quite good, but I've got problems now with my liver or something. She'd got some other problems, so she's taking pills for it, for something. And so I was thinking, fucking hell, I've got to tell her off now after all this story. This is terrible. I really, really, really can't be bothered to do this, because it feels so bad to do this to someone who's like literally just come out of hospital, enjoying her life, and then there's me coming in with this. And then the guy comes in, he like cracks open a beer at like 10 a.m. And then he gets a beer out of the fridge, says, do I want one? I said, no, I don't want a beer. And then he tells me that he met her obviously in the hospital, because she was telling me that. And he said he's got some kind of brain cancer, and got a 50% survival rate. And he said he'd lived in a hospital for many years growing up, and he didn't even know if he was going to make it or not. And I was like, shit, you shouldn't even be drinking. And he said to me, he doesn't care if he dies, he wants to live his life. And this has been the first time he's gone away, and that they met in the hospital and they're just having so much fun. And then they're like invited me out and stuff. I didn't go, I left them to it. But like, it was one of those things where I obviously couldn't tell them off for it. And I was just happy they're having fun. And then when they left, she painted me this picture of a parrot, and it's in my living room now, in my house today. And when I look at that and think about it, I think, like, how short life can be, and how these things can go. And it was a reflection, because I was worried about some shit not to do with OCD that day, and then it just really just threw a spanner in the works and made me sort of crack out of it, because of how you have those perspective shifts. And during that time with Airbnb, I had so many people stay there, so many people that I never wanted to see again because they were like really fucking annoying. And then so many people that were amazing, and we had amazing stories. And like, it was an interesting journey. It was, you see so many lives so quickly. You see so many people's lives so quickly. And you see everything. Like, you see maybe like a girl comes in and moves in with you, and she starts hitting on you from like day one, and then you think to yourself, you like, at first you think, because you think to yourself, like, would she be a nice girlfriend, whatever. But then you're living with her for another couple of days, and then you think, oh my god, like, I really would not want to date her. But you only see it because you're seeing these snapshots of life. Or maybe a guy moves in who's cool, and then you think, yeah, he's really cool, and then after a couple of days you think, fucking hell, I really don't like him. And over that time, there were some great people, there was some cool people, there's some weird people, everything. But you're seeing snapshots of life, people struggling to just to exist in terms of paying for things, and then people that are traveling the world. And every journey, like, some people were stopping off on to my Airbnb whilst traveling around the whole world. Some people came one year and saw me when they were married, then the next year when they were divorced. Everything. So, and it was wild. Like, Airbnb is an experience like that. And it certainly was in those early days when it literally just started. And then, like, I never stay in Airbnbs now, ever, right? And you can say it's snooty, you can say whatever it is about it, but basically the reason I don't do it anymore is because I ran Airbnbs, and I ran mine really clean. Like I just said, I won top 5 Airbnb apartment at one point, and basically I just thought, like, well, to keep it really clean and nice, I put in the effort to do that, but people don't. And I knew that because I saw all the negative reviews other people got and stuff like that. And I just thought, with a hotel, you never know either. And it's not from a contamination OCD point. I could sleep in a fucking ditch tonight. It wouldn't make a difference. But I just always, after a while, I just thought, what, I much prefer to sleep in a hotel, because then I don't have the hassle of having to contact the Airbnb host, or the problem the internet doesn't work or anything like that. But through the journey, I did it for so long. It's also because it became like work, I was doing it for so long, and then I thought to myself, when I now don't do it, when I'm now, I don't want to be, you don't want to be in that world. Like, maybe, like, same as a bit like, I owned a gym for years. I had lots of personal trainers working there for years. I wouldn't rush personally for me today to go to the gym and get a personal trainer or something. Like, it's a world that I was in. Maybe if you were a hairdresser for 20 years or something, you'd have different feelings about that. Not because I've got any problem with personal trainers, not because I've got a problem in gyms. I don't even really train I go to a big gym for like weight training occasionally, where I love it because of all the machines that they have and all the different free weight section. But most of the time I train at home. Most of the time I do things like that because I don't want to be, I don't want to be around an environment a lot of the time that's like very annoying. Like, when I go to the gym, you go in there, there's some idiot on the machine next to you, and he's like, excuse me, can I jump in there? Can I jump in on the next set? And someone's got like 2 tripods, like, propped up to film themselves working out and all that stuff. It's fine. And I do it, but there's certain things in life that as you get older and you're in a position to do that, I just think I much prefer working out at home, just put your own music on. It's much more, it's different, or like I like going for like a long walk or a jog or whatever on the street or in a park. It's just a different feeling. It's a feeling of freedom. Like, a lot of my life is around, I read this Albert Ellis book years ago on happiness, and he was saying you've got to be fiercely selective over what makes you happy. And my life today is based around a lot about freedom. And it's about living, working extremely hard for a mission and a passion that I'm involved in, but about being free in the sense of like the environment. I like to have a coffee where I enjoy the coffee and where it's a nice atmosphere and I can see the world go by and it's not too busy. Like if I get in a lift and there's loads of people getting in the lift, I wait 2, 3 lifts till they're all gone and then go down in the lift on my own. I can go in that lift, but I like life to be sort of pleasant with time to think and to enjoy life. And I don't like to be in that absolute hustle and bustle and the things like, I'm not a big fan of queues. I'm not really big fan of busy places. It's not really for me anymore. You just change like that. And it's not like I was saying, people might say, oh, that's too it's not to do with being snobby, it's to do with being selective. Like I said, I could go to the shittest place right now, I could sleep in a ditch tonight and you wouldn't hear a thing out of me. But it's just about how you want to, how what you appreciate and about being free. When I see people, like I said to Nick the other day, I like if ultra and going to a concert is my idea of hell. I understand why he goes to it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I think that it gives him such a great experience of energy, and he loves all the people around it. And it's something he's been doing for so long, and he loves the music, and I love the music, but. Festival for me or a big busy club now, it just doesn't do it for me. I think I just feel when I'm in those environments, I just always think I want to get out. Like I always think I look forward to not being there. And that's how I base things is I want to do the things that on this short life on earth that are really challenging and push me, not be obsessed with comfort, but also enjoy life sort of freely choosing what the ways that I want to go about life. And that's what I do now. And I don't stick to the status quo. I don't stick to the norm. I do it, and that's freedom. And when you really think about that, you break those barriers down, or you think about life. It changes things. It changes how you go about life, and you find new interests. Like I told you, there was a time where I was playing 6 hours of chess a day. That was completely obsessive, but I loved it. And I just asked myself a question: do I love playing chess? Yes. Do I want to play more chess? Yes. And then I just played a lot of chess, and I was very happy. But then it did take over a bit, and I was doing too much, so I decided not to do it, or anything. Like you have to weigh these things up, and you have to plan your life like that. And life is, like I said, a rich tapestry of working out what you like and what you don't like, and going through these things and seeing how it all pans out. And some things you want to do over and over again, and some things you don't want to do so much, and just wonder and think and see how you do things. Like I was in Amsterdam maybe a couple of years ago. I used to go to Amsterdam a fair bit because obviously it's near to the UK. I used to work with a lot of people with OCD in Holland, and I used to do in-house coaching at one point where I'd live in people's house with severe OCD, and I used to look after a guy there who who had a big football club there, and he had very, very, very bad OCD. And I used to stay in his house, but he was a cool guy, and getting him recovered. And I remember at one point, like he was in Rotterdam and I was in Amsterdam, and I just spend the afternoons often just wandering along the canal, having a coffee, having lunch, just watching the world go by. And there's something about Amsterdam that has a magic. You've got this kind of like gothic city, like with especially when you're just like standing on the canal looking along it, and it's like there's the sun setting or whatever, and it's just got that sort of very old feel because it's very old. And you all these great ideas from sort of writing and philosophy, or how I made all these quotes, or how if you look at what the work is today of OCD recovery, it's like if I'd written multiple books, because social media posts today are almost like the pages of a book tomorrow. And so many pages in the book, when you're traveling and you're wondering and you're thinking about things, that they became the work of today, of all the work of OCD recovery from those journeys and different things. Even when I was in those horrible places in Treblinka and Auschwitz in Poland a couple of years ago, when I made those videos, they're all reflections, they're all ideas, everything you're thinking on, and you're changing your perspective, if you like to think that is. And I get that deep thought from maybe if I'm going to a classical music concert, if maybe I'm walking along the street, if maybe I'm sitting having dinner, all these different things. And you will notice that along the recovery journey, you will have a series of different paths that form through the sort of valley of acceptance to open up your mind in channels that stops you being nervously engaged back in on yourself in a self-defeating cycle. And that is, again, to repeat, the rich tapestry of understanding your mind, yourself, and giving up this internal fight, which we all know as OCD, the internal anxious fight to control and feel somewhat calm, but it becomes a self-defeating cycle that we stay stuck in. And that's some journeys of my life and some journeys of some stories of that I went through, and different appreciation and gratitude and understanding that came about through those.